Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. When you deposit money into the bank, you trust it's safe, and that trust is there because of the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, a system created in 1933 around the time of the Great Depression to prevent bank failures from wiping out entire life savings. And the FDIC offers one simple but powerful promise. If your bank fails, your money is protected. And now President Trump is floating the idea of eliminating it or completely restructuring it. So what does that actually mean? The FDIC plays a crucial role in maintaining consumer confidence in our financial system. Today, it insures up to $250,000 per depositor, per account ownership type, per insured bank. So if I have $250,000 in an individual account at one bank and another $250,000 in a joint account at that same bank, both would be fully covered because they fall under different ownership categories. And if you have deposits that exceed these limits, it can be a great idea to go ahead and spread them out over multiple insured banks to ensure that you are fully covered by this insurance and give yourself a greater peace of mind. And here's something worth noting. No depositor has ever lost insured funds since the FDIC was created. And that perfect track record is why Americans have such faith in the system. This isn't an agency we talk about in theory. This is an agency that has proven its value over and over and over again during times of crisis. During the 2008 financial meltdown, when banks were collapsing, the FDIC stepped in to make sure every insured depositor remained whole. And again, in March 2023, another bank crisis hit. This time, the FDIC stepped in to protect depositors even beyond the $250,000 limit in specific cases, simply to prevent panic and keep faith in the system intact. At the end of the day, that's the whole point of the FDIC, to protect depositors, prevent bank runs, and keep the financial system stable. And so far, they have been very successful at doing just that. The FDIC isn't just about insuring deposits, it also keeps banks in check. Think of them as a watchdog, constantly monitoring thousands of banks, making sure they're financially stable and not engaging in risky behavior that could lead to bank failure. And they don't do this alone. They do this alongside other regulatory agencies like the Federal Reserve and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency to enforce banking laws and protect consumers like you and me. But now President Trump has proposed some changes. During his first term, President Trump focused on deregulation in the financial sector, but there was never any talk about eliminating the FDIC. However, early on in his second term, there has been drastic changes. There's been proposals, or discussions at least, about eliminating or completely revamping the FDIC. One idea that was put forth by the newly established Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, was to completely abolish the FDIC and roll over its insurance duties to the U.S. Treasury, essentially just shrinking or completely eliminating the FDIC altogether as an independent agency. Another proposal suggested combining the FDIC and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency into a single agency to reduce redundancies. This too would mean that the FDIC would no longer exist as a standalone agency. The insurance duties would go on over to the U.S. Treasury, and then the bank supervision and failure management duties would be absorbed by another agency or completely eliminated. The reasoning? The administration argues that the U.S. has too many overlapping regulatory agencies, and consolidating them could cut costs and streamline oversight. But here's the big takeaway. None of these ideas have turned into formal policy proposals. At this point, they're simply just topics of discussion. And keep in mind that any restructuring or elimination of the FDIC would have to be approved by Congress. So that means it's not likely to happen anytime soon. But let's talk about it. What would actually happen if the FDIC were eliminated or completely restructured? Some argue that it could cut down on government bureaucracy and make banking more efficient. Others argue that it could destabilize our entire financial system. So let's talk about the pros and cons. As far as the pros, merging the FDIC with other regulators could cut red tape and reduce duplication. There could be cost savings. Fewer agencies might mean lower government expenses. Though keep in mind the FDIC is funded by banks, not taxpayers. There might be greater accountability. Moving deposit insurance to the Treasury could align it more closely with broader economic policies, and it could encourage market discipline. Some argue that without government-backed insurance, banks and depositors would be more cautious with risk. And what about the cons? Well, we could risk bank runs. Without the FDIC guarantee, depositors could panic and pull their money at the very first sign of trouble. We could have a loss of expertise. The FDIC has decades of experience handling bank failures. No other agency is as equipped for the job. There could be public confusion. Changing the system after 90 years could shake consumer confidence, and that could create chaos. It would be a legal and political nightmare. Congress would have to approve the change, and neither party seems that interested in scrapping the FDIC. And finally, it really could hurt smaller banks. Community banks rely on the FDIC insurance to compete with bigger banks. Removing it could push customers to solely large institutions. The bottom line, the FDIC has been seen as a pillar of financial stability for nearly a century. So while regulatory tweaks are certainly possible, its complete elimination is highly unlikely and widely seen as too risky. Now, in fairness, Trump isn't the first president to consider shaking up the FDIC. Far from it. Since the 1960s, multiple administrations have floated the idea to merge, shrink, or fully absorb the FDIC by other agencies. Johnson-era advisors suggested moving it under the Treasury Department, which would have ended its independence. Nixon's team proposed merging it with other deposit insurers. Reagan and George H.W. Bush considered shifting its bank supervision duties elsewhere. Clinton pushed to create a mega regulator that would take over FDIC's exam authority, but the Federal Reserve shot it down. And in the 2000s, Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson suggested combining banking regulators into a single entity, an idea that was scrapped when the 2008 financial crisis hit. Despite all of these proposals, none of them have ever become law. The FDIC has survived every attempt to restructure or eliminate it, quite simply because banks rely on the deposit insurance, and so too does consumer confidence. The only major change, well, that happened in 1989 when the FDIC actually absorbed another failing deposit insurer, and that expanded its role rather than reducing it. Experts across the board strongly oppose eliminating the FDIC, and for good reason. Banking regulators and academics warned that removing FDIC insurance would be a really bad idea. It could trigger mass panic. People might start to question, is my money safe in a bank? Former FDIC Chair Sheila Blair called the idea really bad, pointing out that over the past 90 years, no depositor has ever lost an insured dollar. You really can't argue with that track record. And another former FDIC official who chose to remain anonymous bluntly put it, "It's one of the dumbest ideas I've ever heard." The FDIC isn't just about insurance. It has specialized expertise in handling bank failures. Experts argue that no other agency has the same depth of experience, and eliminating it could seriously weaken the system's ability to respond to banking crises. And even politically, this doesn't really have any support. Sure, banks may occasionally complain about having regulation, but they like having a dedicated deposit insurance system because it prevents bank runs and it brings reassurance to customers. And realistically, if anything were to change, it would have to pass through Congress, and that's going to be a very tough sell. Some argue that the U.S. has too many overlapping regulators and that consolidating agencies could improve efficiency. A few have even suggested privatizing deposit insurance, but even those reports say it's politically impossible. So yes, while there is an appetite for streamlining agencies, getting rid of the FDIC is universally seen as reckless and unworkable. So how did the market react to all of this talk about eliminating the FDIC? Not much at all. Bank stocks barely moved, and that's because investors don't see this as a real possibility. If people thought the FDIC was going somewhere, they would actually be pulling their money out of their accounts to keep it someplace safer, and bank stocks would take a hit. That's not happening, and the banks, they're not pushing for this either. From the consumer side, the FDIC is one of those government agencies that people actually trust, and the idea of it disappearing would send shockwaves throughout the entire public. Without it in place, at the first sign of trouble, people would be pulling their money out of banks. At the end of the day, markets, banks, and consumers all see this as an idea that's not going anywhere. As one bank lobbyist put it, getting rid of the FDIC is about as likely as eliminating Wednesday. In other words, it's not going to happen. The FDIC isn't just another government agency. It's a safety net that keeps our financial system stable. While there's always room for regulatory reform, eliminating the FDIC would be an extreme and risky move. It's no surprise that experts and banks and the public overwhelmingly oppose this idea. So while the conversation around regulation reform will likely continue, one thing is clear: the FDIC isn't going anywhere anytime soon. What are your thoughts? Leave them in a comment down below. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. Or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye. At the end of the day, I don't even know if I'm looking at the camera. I'm so out of it. I haven't eaten in 4 days because I'm so sick. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna sell my dog. A discussion about taking down, we shouldn't say taking down. That could be construed as being very aggressive. Let's not use aggressive language. It is very hard to toe the line in all of these videos. I do my best. Oh my gosh, my nose is so itchy. Okay, from the consumer side, from what did they say if your nose is itching, like someone's talking about you? Or is it that you're lying? Oh my gosh. I don't think I'm lying. I think the script is accurate. My nose is still itchy. Maybe it means somebody's talking about me. What does it mean? I think there's an old wives' tale. I think it means somebody's talking about you, right? The only major change happened in 1898. Ugh. 1989. I should have known. I was 2 at the time, right?